What is going on, guys? It's Wednesday, and it means paintball question time. Is the GOG eXtcy a good paintball gun? My thoughts on the rate of fire for professional paintball players, and if they should be playing on AstroTurf, and ways to get little kids to be more aggressive on the paintball field. So for these paintball question times, typically I'm like, use that hashtag right there on your question wherever you want. You can leave it in a comment below. You could leave that question on Twitter or Instagram or Facebook with that hashtag, and I'd find it. Also now, we're gonna have that phone number right there. So call that phone number and leave me a voicemail. It just goes straight to voicemail and no one's gonna answer it. Leave a voicemail, maybe I can answer it here on Paintball Question Time or on a live stream on Thursday night here on YouTube. First up, Nicco Folino asks, what are your thoughts on the GOG eXtcy? I never really see you talking about it, so I was wondering if it is a good beginner gun. So first, I don't really like to answer these kind of questions on Paintball Question Time. I prefer this video format to kind of be a little bit more broad. So one specific gun, is it good or not? I typically like to steer clear of those, but since I'm asked this GOG eXtcy question quite often, we're gonna tackle it. So first, a little bit of a history lesson. There used to be this company called Smart Parts. They made a paintball gun called the Ion. The Ion was, and kind of is, still very, very popular. They shot well, it was low pressure, pretty air efficient, really reliable, just good paintball guns all around. Smart Parts went out of business and then kind of quickly reformed the company called GOG. And their main product at launch was the eXtcy. The eXtcy was very similar to that Ion in a lot of ways, right? Like it shot very similar, kind of had the same bolt. It was very close to the Ion. So at launch, the eXtcy was great. It had all those great qualities that was the Ion for a number of years. But the last 2 years of their production, they started to get really bad. So I used to own this paintball store. We sold the eXtcy for a very long time, really almost the entire production time, except for the last 2 years when it started to get weird. We just had lots of problems and no real specific problem. There would be solenoid problems and leaking problems and board problems and all kinds of little little problems that the guns had. The problems for us at least were so common that I'll bet half of the guns we received just didn't work out of the box. We maybe placed 3 orders, bought a bunch of guns, half of them didn't work, and we're like, maybe this batch was bad. Did it again, and then we're like, half of these ones don't work. Did it one more time and was like, this is ridiculous. We're not carrying the eXtcy anymore. It's too many problems. So yeah, while the gun shoots well, they're just super unreliable, and it's kind of hard to determine which gun you actually get. Maybe you're buying a used one from 8 years ago and you're gonna have no problems. Maybe you're buying a used one that's only 2 or 3 years old and it's just awful. So it's really difficult to tell which gun you're actually gonna get, whether it's one of the good old ones or one of the bad new ones. And they have been out of production for 2 or 3 years now, so it's a little difficult. Either way, when you're buying a brand new eXtcy, the thing could be 3 or 4 years old. So I don't think there's really much more to say about these, other than just don't buy an eXtcy. It's not that difficult. I mean, there's plenty of other options out there in that price range that you could get, like the Mini GS, the Proto Rise, even buying an old Ion is gonna be better, I think, than the eXtcy. So there's lots of options out there, just don't buy an eXtcy. Chris Martinez says, I talked to a pro player this weekend, and he said he wouldn't mind seeing the NXL go back to semi-automatic uncapped. What are your thoughts? He has another question too. Also, with the crazy rain at NXL Taxas, do you think it would be sort of nice to have pro players only play on turf? Firing mode wise, whatever, I don't really care. We could have semi-uncapped, semi-capped, full auto uncapped, ramping capped, whatever it is. I'll play anything. And I think that would kind of be the same sentiment amongst all these professional players. I think most of them are kind of just whatever, do whatever you want, we're playing anyway. I do kind of think maybe bringing back semi-auto could be interesting though, mainly just to mix it up and keep things a little bit interesting. I've talked about on here always, how I really like the Millennium series in the PSP or NXL, how they were quite a bit different, because it was cool to go watch Millennium because it was quite a bit different than what we're used to playing here in the US. And changing things up, maybe going back to semi, kind of keeps things interesting. It's fun to, oh man, I want to go out and try to play the NXL field in semi-auto and see how it goes. So I like that. I think it's fun to mix stuff up just for the sake of mixing it up. So the whole reason these ramping guns exist and the caps at rate of fire exist is because so many guys cheated back in the day. It was just way easier to tell them, you gotta shoot 15 balls a second ramping, and these are the ramping rules. It was just a lot easier to enforce that ramping rather than uncapped semi. So if the league went back to an uncapped semi rule, they have to figure out how to enforce it. Are they gonna build a machine that actually checks, you're getting one pull one shot? And like, how are they monitoring that? I don't even know if we'd necessarily need a machine to actually like check rate of fire stuff, because I think guys are a little bit more honorable now. Yeah, we get cheating some still, like guys wiping hits and stuff, but I kind of feel like that's like part of the game. When you're getting guys like shooting 350 feet per second and like crazy rate of fires, it's definitely looked down upon. So I don't know, that didn't really answer your question, but I think it'd be cool, but mainly just because it's cool to change stuff, I think, I don't know. The turf thing, I do think it would be cool if the pro fields were all turf, but I don't think it's really realistic. So I think if you're gonna turf one field, like say you're gonna turf the pro field, I really do think you need to do all of them. So like Texas, for example, there were 8 fields, so you need to turf 8 fields. And think about all that money involved, right? You gotta buy the turf, you gotta transport it, so that's 4 truckloads of AstroTurf. You have to pay people to install it, you gotta uninstall it, you gotta do maintenance and storage, and like there's just so much cost in turfing all the fields. I just don't know if it's realistic. With the money thing aside, I do think the NXL need to offer an equal, if not a better experience to their divisional teams than the pro teams. Because think about it, right? If you were a Division III team, you paid, $3,000 an entry, and you paid for a flight and like hotels and food and all this stuff. You invest all this money into playing the NXL, and then the pros get like this really nice turf, and you guys are left in the mud. It would really upset some of the divisional teams. And I don't think the NXL can do that. I think the NXL has to like show that they're dedicated to these divisional teams, mainly because that's who's paying all the bills. It's all the divisional teams. I'm not saying the NXL should like ignore the pro teams. I think they just need to give an equal, like, I don't know, experience to all the teams. And you could argue that without the pro division, they wouldn't even have an NXL, and that probably is true. But the pro players are gonna play wherever there's a tournament, right? NXL's like, oh, we're having it on Tuesday. They're like, all right, we'll be there. Where the divisional teams aren't. The divisional teams have so many more options. There's tons of regional leagues around the US. When there's like 4, 5 pro tournaments a year in the United States. In some cases though, I don't even know if it matters. Like in Texas, right? They would have put turf on those fields. They just go to the grass and just put the turf on it. So when it rains, all the water just, still goes on the turf and then just comes up and then creates just puddles everywhere. So it's still gonna be wet all over the place. They're like paintball fields, right? When they installed this stuff, they're like putting different layers of materials to like help drainage so you don't get big like puddles of water all over the field. I'd hope most paintball fields do that, but really most of them aren't. That's kind of why we see big, huge puddles all over the place. So yeah, I think it'd be awesome. I just don't know if it's realistic at this point. Staff Sergeant Gage asks, how can I get my 11-year-old son to be more of an active player, i.e. shooting and moving more? He generally likes to hide most of the time. Also, we only play recball. Most of the time when I'm watching kids play, they're just scared to get shot, and that's the main reason they're not moving. So maybe he's only been shot a couple times, or maybe he's only been shot from far away, and he's just scared to move up closer because he doesn't want to get shot close. I think maybe just getting him like more adept, or getting him used to like getting shot and making him realize that that pain is only temporary. That reminded me of a quote. It's a good quote. This is by Lance Armstrong. Pain is temporary. It may last a minute or an hour or a day or a year, but eventually it will subside and something else will take its place. If I quit, however, it lasts forever. That's a good one. I just like that. Back to your question. Maybe after getting shot a couple times up close, he might realize that, yeah, it hurts in that moment, but that pain is only temporary, and it will subside after like 30 seconds. So whenever I'm playing with kids, like kids that are aged 10 to 13-ish, we'll say, not 20-year-olds, I'll like encourage them to try to move a little bit, like give them little pointers, like, hey, there's a guy over there, he's shooting at us, but he's so far away, he might not be able to shoot you. So you can easily move up to that next bunker, because sometimes they think maybe they're not scared to get shot, like because of the pain, but they're scared to get shot and like have to go out. So helping them out a little bit, like showing them like what to do or like what to look for, I think can help encourage that movement. So I've even like gone out and like helped kids, like moved with them to different bunkers. So like, I think this was 3 months ago out at Capitol Edge Paintball Park. We were kind of in a back bunker, me and this one kid, and he was kind of scared, right? The bunker was pretty small. He didn't want to do anything. He was just like sitting there terrified. So it's like, if you move to the bunker in front of us, it's way bigger and has a lot more coverage, but he was still scared. He's like, I don't want to do it. And I was like, you're all right. No one's even shooting at us right now. And I was like, what if we do it together? And he's like, all right. And then we went together. So he just needed like that little extra help. He wanted like a friend or like a partner to just go do it with him. But we moved to that next bunker. He was still a little bit scared, but I eventually got him to like shoot back at people at least. I also know that when I was a kid, right, like if I was 12 years old at the paintball field and my parents were like, do this and this and this, I'd have been like, what are you talking about? I'm not doing that stuff. But if I had someone else that like I looked up to a little bit telling me to do the exact same thing, I'd have probably been like, yeah, that's a great idea. Maybe find someone out there that like looks like they know what they're doing, or someone that like maybe he's talking to or looked up to, and asking that person if they could like help give some pointers or something like that. That might be a good idea too. So that's my advice of how to get him to be a little bit more aggressive, maybe shoot back at the bad guys a little bit more. If you guys have any suggestions on how to get him more aggressive, maybe get over his paintball fears, let myself and Staff Sergeant Gage know in a comment below.